Welcome, dear listener. Tonight, we journey back in time, across centuries and continents, to a world both familiar and strange. You are invited to leave behind the noise and restlessness of the present moment, and instead, let your mind drift toward the heart of Central America, where the Aztec civilization once flourished. Imagine yourself sinking into a quiet rhythm, each word like a slow breath, carrying you deeper into stillness. The story we will explore together is not meant to excite or quicken your pulse, but rather to soothe you, to give your thoughts a soft landscape to wander through as sleep gently approaches. The Aztec world was one of contrasts, majestic temples rising over bustling marketplaces, warriors moving with discipline and purpose, and families who lived their lives in small, steady routines, shaped by the cycles of nature and the demands of their gods. Tonight, we will not rush through battles or ceremonies. Instead, we will walk at a gentle pace, noticing the details of daily life, pausing to reflect on the figures who shaped this empire, uncovering mysteries in their culture and comparing the humble and the powerful who shared this world. In the first part of our journey, we will immerse ourselves in the daily life of the ordinary Aztec, allowing the rhythms of their existence to unfold slowly, like a long and steady song. Imagine yourself at dawn, standing in the valley of Mexico. The cool morning air settles on your skin, carrying with it the faint scent of damp earth and wood smoke. Far away, the peaks of snow-capped volcanoes rise into a pale sky, their silhouettes etched in soft blue and silver. Before you, on a cluster of islands in the Great Lake, the city of awakens. This is no ordinary town, but a city of tens of thousands. Its canals crisscross like veins, its stone causeways stretch toward the shore, and its temples rise above the rooftops, sharp against the horizon. Yet the grandeur of the city is not what you notice first. Instead, you hear the soft murmur of voices as families stir awake, the quiet rustle of mats being rolled up, and the familiar crackle of a fire being coaxed back to life. Step inside a modest home of adobe and reeds. Its walls are simple, but its spaces are carefully ordered. A clay hearth glows faintly with embers from the night before. Over it, a mother grinds maize on a metate, her hands steady, the sound of stone against stone echoing with a calm rhythm. Each press produces a soft crunch, followed by silence, and then again the crunch and silence. It is a sound every Aztec child grows up with, the sound of nourishment. Maize is more than food. Here it is life itself. From maize comes the soft tortillas, folded with beans or chilies, the warm atole sipped at dawn, and the fragrant tamales wrapped in husks. Alongside maize, squash, beans, and amaranth provide balance, while chilies bring a sharp spark of flavor. Imagine the earthy aroma of maize mingling with the spice of roasting peppers, rising gently into the morning air. Children wake to this world of quiet labor. They stretch on reed mats, rubbing sleep from their eyes, and soon take their places in the family's work. The youngest carry water in clay jars from the canal, the cool weight pressing against their small arms. Older children help with weaving, the threads passing back and forth with a rhythm as steady as a lullaby. Boys may practice fishing with simple nets or learn the skills of planting. Girls mirror their mothers, grinding maize or twisting cotton fibers into thread. Childhood is not idle. It is a slow apprenticeship into the pattern of adult life. Step outside and the city unfolds around you. Canoes glide silently through the canals, their paddles dipping with an even rhythm. Farmers row out toward the chinampas, the floating gardens that turn the shallow waters into fertile fields. These are not small plots, but carefully constructed islands, anchored by willow trees and layered with rich soil. On them, crops flourish, maize stalks reaching upward, bean vines twining, squash spreading wide, and flowers blooming in bright, ordered rows. The air is cool and damp, carrying the scent of fresh vegetation. Farmers bend low, their hands sinking into soft soil, their movements measured and unhurried. In another part of the city, artisans are already at work. Potters shape clay with patient hands, their fingers smoothing vessels that will carry food and water. Stonecutters chip slowly, forming tools or ornaments. Painters grind pigments into brilliant powders, reds, blues, and yellows that will soon cover walls or codices with images of gods and stories. Each craft has its rhythm, each trade a familiar cadence that joins the larger harmony of the city. As the morning ripens into midday, the great marketplace of Tlatelolco comes alive. Picture a vast square, open and orderly, where thousands gather. It is a place of sound, but not of chaos, more like the steady hum of a hive. Merchants display cacao beans, woven cloth, baskets of maize, and bright feathers that shimmer like jewels. The fragrance of roasted food drifts through the air. Chilies, tomatoes, herbs, and honey. Customers speak softly as they barter, their exchanges careful, polite, and practiced. Imagine yourself walking slowly among them. To your left, a stall displays clay cups in neat rows. To your right, cacao is poured into small bags, beans counted carefully, since they serve not only as drink but also as currency. The marketplace is more than an economy. It is the gathering place of life itself. Here, news travels, stories are told, and the pulse of the empire can be felt in the steady murmur of trade. Yet, amidst work and exchange, there is always reverence. Small household shrines hold offerings of flowers or bits of food. Families pause to whisper quiet prayers, acknowledging the unseen forces that guide their days. In the larger temples, priests chant slowly, their voices rising like the drone of wind through reeds. The sound is not meant to thrill, but to steady, a constant reminder that the human world and the divine are woven together. As the sun climbs higher, warmth spills across the canals and adobe walls. The city hums with activity, yet the pace remains steady, unhurried. Children laugh as they splash in the shallows. Farmers return with baskets heavy with produce. Canoes slip silently back into narrow waterways. It is a life that is not easy, but it is balanced, anchored by community, sustained by maize, ordered by ritual, and held together by the cycles of nature. And so, as the day stretches forward, the rhythm of life in becomes clear. Work, worship, nourishment, and family, bound together by repetition and tradition. A rhythm as steady as your own breath, rising and falling, carrying you gently deeper into stillness. From the quiet rhythm of daily life, we turn now toward the story of a figure whose presence still echoes across history, a man whose choices and burdens defined the final years of the Aztec world. Every civilization has its rulers, those who carry the weight of their people's hopes and fears. For the Aztecs, one such figure was Montezuma II, remembered both as a great emperor and as the man who faced the first arrival of Europeans in the Valley of Mexico. Let us walk slowly toward his world. Picture yourself moving through the bustling streets of past canals lined with canoes, past markets alive with voices, until you reach the very heart of the city, the sacred precinct. Here, the atmosphere shifts. The noise of the marketplace fades, replaced by a solemn stillness. The square is vast, enclosed by walls, and dominated by the twin temples of the Templo Mayor, their steps rising sharply toward the sky. Within these walls stands the palace of the Tlatoani, the speaker, the emperor of the Aztec people. Montezuma's palace was not a single hall, but a sprawling complex with many rooms, gardens, and courtyards. Imagine long corridors paved with stone, shaded by colonnades, and cooled by fountains whose waters shimmered in the sun. Within these spaces lived not only the emperor himself, but also attendants, scribes, warriors, and priests, all moving quietly, fulfilling their roles with precision. Montezuma was born into privilege, but privilege meant responsibility. As the son of nobles, his early life was shaped by rigorous training. Picture him as a boy, studying in the calm dimness of a temple school, learning to read the codices books, made not with paper, but with bark and deerskin, filled with painted symbols and images. These codices told stories of gods, of ancestors, and of battles long past. From them, young Montezuma absorbed not only history, but also a vision of the world, a universe alive with divine forces, where human duty was to maintain balance. Training in war was no less demanding. The boy practiced with spears and shields, his movements drilled until they flowed with precision. Warriors were expected to show courage, discipline, and endurance. For Montezuma, these lessons instilled not only skill, but also the understanding that leadership demanded sacrifice. To be noble was to serve first in learning, then in battle, and eventually in rule. When Montezuma ascended to the throne in 1502, he became ruler of one of the most powerful empires in the Americas. The Aztec domain stretched across valleys and mountains, encompassing dozens of city-states that paid tribute in goods, labor, and loyalty. Cotton cloth, cacao beans, turquoise feathers, and gold flowed steadily into enriching its markets and temples. Imagine Montezuma on the day of his coronation, dressed in rich garments of cotton and feathers, his headdress glittering with jade and turquoise. He would have walked solemnly toward the Templo Mayor. Priests chanted, drums sounded in slow, steady beats, and incense curled upward in fragrant smoke. In that moment, Montezuma was more than a man. He was the embodiment of his people's connection to the gods. In his court, the atmosphere was one of careful formality. Montezuma was treated with immense reverence. Those who approached him removed their sandals and bowed their heads, speaking only when permitted. He was said to rarely laugh in public, preferring a calm, dignified presence. Meals were served with ceremony, sometimes in great variety, with dozens of dishes brought by attendants. Yet even in these moments of comfort, Montezuma remained a figure of restraint, for the role of emperor was bound by solemn responsibility. His reign was marked by ambition. Tribute demands increased, drawing more wealth into the capital, but also stirring discontent among subject peoples. Montezuma strengthened the empire's hold through both military campaigns and diplomatic marriages. At the same time, he deepened the religious structure of society, ensuring that rituals were observed with precision. The festivals of the calendar linked to harvests, seasons, and gods were carried out under his watchful eye. To the Aztecs, these rituals were not mere tradition, but vital acts that kept the universe itself in balance. Yet Montezuma's reign is remembered most for the encounter that would reshape the world. In 1519, news reached him of pale-skinned strangers arriving on the eastern shores. They came in great ships, unlike any craft the Aztecs had seen, and they brought animals, horses that seemed like creatures from myth. Their weapons were of metal, their appearance strange, their language unfamiliar. Messengers traveled quickly, carrying detailed descriptions to Montezuma. Imagine the emperor listening in silence, his expression unreadable as he heard of their shining armor, their thunderous weapons, their strange beasts. To many Aztecs, these newcomers seemed otherworldly, and their timing was uncanny. For in Aztec belief, the god Quetzalcoatl, who had departed long ago, was prophesied to return from the east in a year that aligned with 1519. To Montezuma, this was no simple matter of war or diplomacy. It was a moment heavy with meaning, perhaps even divine. His first instinct was caution. He sent emissaries bearing gifts, fine cotton garments, precious stones, and gold. Perhaps these gifts were meant as offerings of respect, or perhaps as a way to gauge the intentions of the strangers. Yet these gifts had the opposite effect. The newcomers, led by saw the wealth as a sign of greater riches to come. As Cortés and his allies marched inland, Montezuma faced choices that carried enormous weight. Should he confront them with force, risking disaster if they truly were divine? Should he welcome them, hoping to maintain peace? The emperor's caution, rooted in tradition and prophecy, led him to choose diplomacy. Picture Montezuma standing upon the steps of the Templo Mayor, gazing across his city as the foreigners drew closer. Below him, the canals glistened in the fading sun. His people moved through the markets and streets, their lives following familiar rhythms, unaware of how close history was to shifting. For Montezuma, the responsibility was immense. Every decision touched not only his people's lives, but also their relationship with the gods. When the meeting came, it was both majestic and unsettling. Montezuma received him with gifts and ceremony. The emperor's bearing was calm, his words measured, but beneath the surface was uncertainty. To his people, it may have seemed an act of diplomacy. To historians, it appears as hesitation, shaped by a worldview in which every sign carried divine meaning. In the days that followed, Montezuma's position grew more precarious. He was caught between the expectations of his people, the demands of the foreigners, and the weight of prophecy. His palace, once a place of order and reverence, became a prison of uncertainty. Yet even in these moments, Montezuma remained a figure of dignity measured, deliberate, and bound by the traditions of his world. Imagine him walking slowly through his palace gardens at dusk. The air is cool, scented with flowers. Torches flicker in the courtyards. Beyond the palace walls, the city hums with life merchants closing their stalls, children laughing along the canals, families sharing meals by the fire. Within, the emperor carries the silence of a man who knows he stands at the edge of something vast and unknown. Montezuma's story, calm yet heavy with meaning, reflects the paradox of leadership. He was both powerful and constrained, both revered and questioned. His choices were shaped not by weakness, but by belief that the gods shaped every event, that signs must be read carefully, and that rushing headlong could break the delicate balance of the world. And so, his reign became the turning point of Aztec history, the moment when the rhythm of centuries met the arrival of something entirely new, a story of grandeur and fragility, of confidence shadowed by doubt, of a leader who carried the weight of empire on his shoulders as the horizon shifted before him. As we step away from the world of emperors and political life, we drift gently into another realm of the Aztec civilization, its culture, its mysteries, and the traces it left behind for us to uncover. Civilizations live not only in the acts of rulers, nor in the rise and fall of battles, but also in their symbols, their rituals, their art, and in the quiet secrets preserved in soil and stone. The Aztec world is remembered in echoes. Some echoes are large and undeniable monuments, temples, carved stones. Others are delicate and easily overlooked. A painted codex folded like an accordion, a clay figurine hidden in the ground, a piece of turquoise inlaid in a mask. These fragments are not complete stories, but hints and whispers, requiring patience and imagination to piece together. When seen together, they form a mosaic, offering us glimpses of how the Aztecs saw their world. Picture yourself once again in the canals shimmer under the sun, the plazas bustle with life. But this time, see it as archaeologists, do not just as a city alive in its moment, but as layers stacked upon layers of history. Beneath the surface of what is now Mexico City, fragments of this world still wait. Digging foundations for new buildings sometimes uncovers ancient walls, painted murals, or carved stones. Archaeologists with small brushes and steady hands kneel in the dust, revealing objects last touched hundreds of years ago. A figurine peeks through the soil. A ceremonial blade glints faintly. A wall still bears the faded trace of red paint. Each fragment is like a doorway, allowing us to pass if only for a moment back into their world. Perhaps the most famous of these doorways is the sunstone, sometimes called the Aztec calendar. Imagine standing before this massive disc, 12 feet wide, weighing more than 20 tons. Its surface is crowded with intricate carvings, alive with detail. At its center, a face looks outward, the visage of Tenochtitlán, the sun god. His tongue is shaped like a blade, a reminder of sacrifice, for the Aztecs believed the sun required nourishment to rise each day. Around him are concentric circles, rings of glyphs and symbols. They speak of cycles of creation and destruction, of worlds born and ended. The Aztecs believed they lived in the age of the fifth Sunan, age destined, like the four before it, to eventually fall away. Close your eyes and run your fingers along its grooves. Feel the stone cool and solid beneath your hand. Each cut into the rock is precise, deliberate, and charged with meaning. This was not decoration for its own sake. It was philosophy inscribed in stone, a vision of life as cyclical, bound to endless renewal and collapse. To the Aztecs, the sunstone was both a calendar and a map of the cosmos, a reminder of humanity's place within vast, repeating patterns. Time itself, in their world, was complex and layered. They measured it not with one calendar, but with two interlocking systems. One was the solar year of 365 days, guiding agriculture and the seasons. The other was a 260-day sacred cycle, guiding ritual, prophecy, and fate. Imagine these two calendars as wheels with carved teeth meshing together. Each day carried a unique combination of signs from both cycles. Some combinations were considered favorable, others dangerous, and priests studied them to determine when to plant, when to celebrate, when to rest, and when to pray. The turning of these calendars brought reassurance. Nothing was random. Every festival, every ceremony, every harvest had its appointed day. For the Aztecs, life was not a matter of chance, but of alignment, human action woven carefully into the larger rhythm of the universe. Much of this worldview is confirmed by what archaeologists find in their excavations. Beneath temples and plazas lie caches of offerings, carefully buried to honor the gods. At the heart of stood the Templo Mayor, a great double pyramid crowned by twin shrines, one dedicated to Huitzilopochtli, god of the sun and war, and the other to Tlaloc, god of rain and fertility. To climb its steps was to ascend a sacred mountain, to stand closer to the divine. And yet, beneath its stones, archaeologists have uncovered countless offerings, each one chosen with meaning. Picture these objects: obsidian blades, sharp and black as night, figurines of gods molded in clay, masks inlaid with turquoise that still gleam after centuries underground, shells brought from distant seas, carried across mountains to be placed here, bones of jaguars and eagles, animals sacred to strength and the heavens. Each object was a voice in a long dialogue between humans and gods. Each carried symbolism, layered with meaning. Imagine kneeling in a dimly lit chamber, watching as an archaeologist brushes away the final traces of soil and a mask emerges, its expression vivid, as though no time has passed at all. The earth has hidden it for centuries, keeping it safe, and now it speaks again. But the Aztec world was not only stone and silence, it was alive with sound and color. Music played an essential role in ceremonies and daily life. Their instruments were simple, yet powerful. Drums carved from hollow wood, stretched with animal skin, struck with open hands to produce rhythms deep and steady. Flutes made from bone, producing high, haunting tones. Rattles filled with seeds, shaking with each movement. Conch shells, blown like horns, releasing low, resonant calls that could echo across plazas. Imagine standing in the city at dusk, the steady beat of drums rising from the temples, the thin notes of flutes spiraling into the night, the rattles keeping time, the conch shells sounding in the distance. It was not music for amusement. It was devotion, a bridge between people and gods. Their art spoke with equal richness. Brilliant feathers from distant lands were arranged into headdresses and cloaks that shimmered in sunlight, green from quetzals, scarlet from macaws, blues from tropical birds. Stones were carved into figures of gods and heroes, their faces fierce yet dignified. Codices, painted on long strips of bark paper, carried scenes of battles, migrations, and myths. To open a codex was to step into a painted world, figures moving in bright reds, yellows, and blues. Many of these codices were destroyed, yet those that survive allow us to glimpse stories across centuries. And then there was poetry, the spoken art of Nahuatl. The Aztecs called their poets flower singers. They spoke not in plain words, but in images and metaphors, weaving together rhythm and sound. They described death not directly, but as sleeping forever. They spoke of life as fragile as flowers, brief as songs. Imagine sitting in a quiet courtyard at night, listening to a poet's voice drift through the air, soft, and measured words that remind you of the beauty and brevity of existence. Even in everyday speech, their language carried a poetic quality. To them, words were not only tools for communication, they were vessels of meaning and beauty. Their way of speaking reflected their understanding of life itself, precious, fleeting, and worthy of adornment. Yet, for all we know, much remains shrouded in silence. Countless codices were lost, their painted stories burned. Many songs vanished when voices fell silent. Rituals are known only in fragments, described by outsiders who never fully understood them. The mystery of the Aztecs is as much about what is missing as what survives. It is a reminder that the past is never whole, but always partial, inviting us to imagine what has been lost. So, as you drift deeper into this story, picture not only as a city of canals and plazas, but as a place where every stone, every song, every carving carried meaning. Beneath its temples lay offerings. In its plazas rose music. In its language bloomed poetry. To walk through its streets was to walk through a cosmos alive with signs and symbols, each moment part of a greater design. Though centuries have passed, though much was buried or destroyed, the echoes remain. The Aztec world continues to speak in stone, in song, in fragments of painted books. It speaks softly, like a distant echo carried on the wind, reminding us that even in silence, the past endures, waiting for us to listen. When we think of a civilization, it is easy to imagine it as a single story, one voice, one rhythm, one way of life. Yet in truth, every society is made of many layers. From the humblest homes to the grandest palaces, from the most common tasks to the loftiest ceremonies. To understand the Aztec world in its fullness, one must look not only at the bustling marketplace or the sacred temple, but also at the homes where families gathered, the schools where children learned, and the palaces where nobles carried themselves with the weight of responsibility and privilege. So, let us drift now into that layered world. Imagine yourself once again in the great island city. Picture the sun rising over the mountains, its light glimmering on the lake, spilling gently into the streets and courtyards. The day is beginning, but the experiences of that day will unfold very differently depending on who you are. A farmer, a merchant, a noble, a priest, a woman, a child will move through the same city, yet their paths will seldom touch in the same way. For most Aztecs, life began before dawn. Imagine the first sounds of morning, the quiet splash of water being drawn from canals, the rustle of mats as families stirred, the low crackle of fire as a woman prepared the day's first tortillas. The smell of maize filled the small one-room house. The family hut, built of adobe or reeds, with simple yet sufficient walls coated with white lime plaster, a roof thatched with palm or reed, and little inside but mats, pots, and tools. The man of the house might rise early to tend the chinampas, those floating gardens upon the water, rich with green plants stretching in neat rows. Bent over the soil, he would weed and water, his body accustomed to labor. Others might set out to fish in the canals, casting nets with steady rhythm, or to carry goods to the marketplace. For the woman, daily life was equally full. She ground maize upon the matate, a stone slab, pushing and pulling the mono, the grinding stone, until the kernels became fine masa. She patted tortillas into shape, laid them upon the comal, and fed her children before sending them to school. Women also wove cloth upon backstrap looms, their fingers moving with patient skill, producing garments both plain and patterned. Children, too, were not idle. Boys learned early to carry water, to gather firewood, to help in the fields. Girls learned to spin and weave, to tend to younger siblings, to prepare food. From childhood onward, discipline and duty were part of life. To the Aztecs, idleness was frowned upon. Work was not merely survival, it was virtue, an expression of belonging to the greater order of the world. And yet, within this labor, there was rhythm and community. Imagine the sound of many hands grinding maize in unison, the laughter of children in the courtyards, the voices of neighbors exchanging news. It was a world of closeness, where houses stood side by side, canals and footpaths linking families in a web of shared existence. In Aztec society, education was universal. Every child, rich or poor, boy or girl, received instruction. Imagine a classroom beneath the open sky, or within a hall built of stone, where teachers guided their students with firm voices. There were two main paths of schooling. For commoners, the Tenochtitlán, or House of Youth, taught boys the arts of war, agriculture, and civic duty. They learned to carry heavy loads, to endure hardship, to wield weapons, and to march in unison. Girls learned from their mothers and elders, practicing weaving, cooking, and household management, though they too received formal lessons in ritual and morality. For the sons of nobles, there was the Comicac, the house of lineage. Here, the focus was on leadership, priesthood, law, and advanced knowledge. Boys studied the calendar, the sacred hymns, the art of rhetoric, and the responsibilities of governance. They memorized long passages of poetry, learned the symbols of the codices, and were trained to lead ceremonies with solemn precision. Discipline was strict. Teachers did not hesitate to punish laziness or disrespect. A boy who shirked his tasks might be pricked with maguey thorns, or made to inhale the pungent smoke of burning chilies. Such measures, though harsh to our eyes, were considered necessary for forming strength of character. To the Aztecs, discipline was kindness, for it shaped the child into one who could endure the demands of life. Imagine, then, the sound of children chanting in unison, repeating sacred hymns in the Nahuatl tongue, their voices rising and falling with rhythm. Picture them carrying water jars or practicing marches, their faces intent, their minds being molded into citizens who understood their place in the great weaving of society. Now, let us lift our gaze from the common houses and walk toward the quarters of the elite. The noble families have lived in larger, more elaborate homes, often built of stone, with multiple rooms arranged around a central courtyard. Imagine whitewashed walls, painted with murals, and doorways leading to storage rooms, sleeping chambers, and kitchens. Here, life was quieter, less burdened by physical labor, but heavy with duty and ceremony. Noblemen were administrators, judges, and warriors of high rank. They sat in councils, wearing garments of cotton dyed in bright colors, their ears adorned with turquoise or gold. Noble women oversaw households, directed servants, and were often educated in poetry and the arts. Meals in noble houses were more varied than those of commoners. While all Aztecs shared the staple of maize, nobles enjoyed delicacies such as turkey, rabbit, fish, and even cacao prepared into a frothy, bitter drink. Imagine them seated on woven mats, servants bringing dishes upon clay vessels, while incense burned lightly in the background. And yet, nobility was not only privilege, it was responsibility. Nobles were expected to serve as examples of discipline and refinement. They studied rhetoric, spoke in measured tones, and carried themselves with dignity. Their children were raised with stricter discipline than those of commoners, for from them greater things were expected. Between the extremes of farmer and noble stood another class, the Tenochtitlán, the merchants. Their role was unique, for they bridged the world of commoner and elite, carrying goods from distant lands and amassing wealth that rivaled nobility. Imagine a caravan of merchants traveling long roads, laden with cacao beans, feathers of quetzal and macaw, obsidian blades, and textiles. They moved in groups for safety, guarded not only against bandits, but also against the dangers of wilderness. Along the way, they gathered intelligence, learning of the strength of enemy cities, the temperament of foreign rulers. In this way, they were also spies, serving the empire with both trade and knowledge. At home in the Tenochtitlán, lived in their own districts, with their own guilds and temples. They hosted feasts, honored their patron gods, and held a status both envied and respected. Though technically commoners, their influence gave them a voice in politics, and their wealth allowed them luxuries that blurred the lines between class. In many societies of the past, women were confined to narrow roles. Among the Aztecs, however, while life was still defined by patriarchy, women were nonetheless vital and honored participants in society. The woman in her home was not diminished, but central. She prepared food, wove cloth, cared for children, and upheld the rhythm of daily life. Yet women also worked in markets, selling goods, bartering, and contributing to the household economy. Some became priestesses, midwives, or healers. Noblewomen might compose poetry or advise their families in matters of conduct and alliance. Marriage was an important transition. Imagine a wedding ceremony. The bride's hands tied to the groom's cloak with a knot, symbolizing unity. Feasting, dancing, and gifts accompanied the event, and from that moment, the woman joined the household of her husband, carrying her skills and her lineage with her. Childbirth, too, was seen as a parallel to battle. Women who gave birth were honored, for they brought new life into the community. The cries of labor were likened to the cries of warriors, and the mother was regarded with deep respect. If she died in childbirth, she was honored as one who had given her life for the people. Her spirit believed to journey alongside that of fallen warriors. As we reflect on these layers of Aztec society, the contrasts become clear. A commoner's day was filled with labor of hand and back. A noble's day was filled with words, rituals, and decisions. A merchant's day was spent on the road between city and wilderness. A woman's day was rooted in the household, yet extended into markets and temples. A child's day was spent in learning under the stern eyes of teachers, and yet, despite the differences, there was unity. Every role, whether humble or exalted, was seen as necessary to the greater whole. The farmer's maize, the noble's judgment, the merchant's goods, the woman's weaving, the priest's prayers, all were strands in a fabric that could not be whole without each thread. Imagine, then, standing once again in the great marketplace of around you gather thousands of people, each from a different path of life. Some are barefoot, carrying baskets of maize. Others wear cloaks dyed in bright colors. Some arrive from distant lands, their speech carrying foreign tones. All converge in one place, exchanging goods, exchanging news, exchanging pieces of their world. It is in such moments that society reveals itself most clearly, not as divisions, but as a living whole, every part essential. To our modern eyes, the stratification of Aztec life might seem rigid, yet within it was meaning and purpose. Commoners knew the dignity of labor, nobles the weight of responsibility, merchants the thrill of distant roads, women the strength of nurturing life. All lived with a sense of belonging to a greater design, where even the smallest act, grinding maize, weaving cloth, chanting a hymn, was imbued with significance. The contrasts of Aztec life remind us that civilization is always layered, always diverse, and always richer than a single story can tell. And so, as we reach the end of our long wandering through the world of the Aztecs, let us pause and rest for a moment. We have moved slowly through their daily lives, from the farmers tending chinampas to the women grinding maize, through their homes and schools, into their poetry and their markets. We have walked with their emperors, listened to their priests, and stood quietly before the stones and offerings they left behind. We have glimpsed the contrasts of commoners and nobles, of merchants and artisans, of children learning and elders guiding. All of these threads, together, wove the fabric of a civilization that shone brightly upon the waters of Lake Texcoco. Imagine the city of once more. The sun has set now, and the lamps are lit. The canals reflect the shimmer of stars, while smoke from countless hearths rises gently into the night. Families gather inside their homes, sharing the last tortillas of the day. In the palace, nobles speak in quiet tones, and in the temples, priests prepare for night offerings. Somewhere in the marketplace, a lone dog pads across the empty square, sniffing at the shadows. The city breathes, alive, but softened by the stillness of evening. From afar, across centuries, that world may seem distant, even unreachable. And yet, in its rhythms and patterns, there is something familiar. The grinding of maize is not so different from the meals we prepare today. The laughter of children in school is timeless. The markets, crowded and noisy, echo the same energy we feel when we walk among stalls in our own time. Even the questions the Aztecs asked about life, about the gods, about time and destiny, are questions we continue to ponder. What remains is not only stone and artifact, but a reminder that humanity has always sought meaning, has always worked and sung and dreamed. And as you lie here now, listening, perhaps you can take comfort in that continuity. The Aztecs lived their days, much as we live ours, under the turning of the sun, under the cycles of time. They rose in the morning, worked through the day, gathered in the evening, and eventually laid themselves to rest at night. That rhythm is shared across all ages, the rhythm of life itself. So, let your mind drift with theirs. Imagine yourself on the lake once more, the canoe rocking gently, the water calm beneath the stars. Around you, the city grows quiet. The temples are silhouettes in the night sky, the voices of the marketplace now hushed. Only the sound of water remains, steady and soothing. The past is distant, yet here it rests beside you, a quiet companion. You have walked with the Aztecs in their homes and palaces, their markets and temples. You have heard their songs, seen their art, and felt the rhythm of their days. Now, as the story closes, it is time to release it gently, like a feather carried off on the evening breeze. Close your eyes. Let the echoes of that world settle into silence. The stones of the temples remain, the waters of the lake continue, but your journey tonight is complete. The Aztecs dreamed their dreams, and now it is time for you to drift into yours. Rest now in the comfort of the present. The past has spoken, softly and calmly, and the night is waiting to hold you.